now I want to move on to introduce our speaker, and that will be Dr. Dion, or Dee, Rossiter. She is a science communication, engagement, and outreach expert who has previously worked with nonprofits, universities, government offices, and for-profit businesses to improve their science engagement efforts. This includes creating new and or improving existing science communication, marketing, education, diversity, and outreach initiatives. Dee is currently the Executive Director for Science at Cal, a program that shares the excitement and relevance of UC Berkeley research with public audiences through lectures, street fairs, festivals, and more. She also works with scientists across campus to build sustainable and impactful science outreach collaborations with community and campus partners. Dee's previous positions include the Director of the Mass Media Fellowship at the American Association for the Advancement of Science and Scientific Programs, and Outreach Manager at the Carnegie Institute for Science. Dee received her bachelor's degree from UC Berkeley and her PhD from UC Santa Cruz, both in Earth and Planetary Sciences. So, thanks, Dee, for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I just want to say hello to everybody. I assume everyone can chat, right?
Yes.
They can. Okay, we can all see each other's chats. Okay, perfect. So why don't we just start by, I don't know, telling me where you're tuning in from, and if you're early, mid, or senior in your career in the chat, just so I can see where people are coming from. Nice. So we have some mix, early, senior. We have people from all over the country, it looks like. That's good. Mid. Nice. Career switch. Good. Very early. Okay. Early, mid, senior. Awesome. This, you can keep adding if you haven't yet. I'll add, I'm in Berkeley and I'm pretty mid. It was weird, I should say, to accept that I was mid and not early anymore. Because it's like when you finally reach a certain age, I'll talk about this, need to update your headshot, for example, because you were 20 years old last time a headshot was taken or something. Like, okay, you're transitioning into being early to mid, and it's sort of this like jolt. But regardless of where you are going to for sure find tips about career and promotion and how do we mentor folks in this way? How do we kind of sustain the enterprise? I know it's probably we have some folks who were librarians in the audience for sure, right? Public health experts, scientists. And again, this is going to be applicable to anyone. Because I'm a scientist, if I say, oh, as a scientist, you do this. And oftentimes I really just mean in any career, we're going to start thinking about how we think about our skills and think about our experiences in a way that's going to promote us. Can you all just say yes or no too if you went to my last talk on science communication? Just write that in the chat. No, yes. Okay. Yay. Okay, perfect. So I'm actually going to start off with a little bit about who I am a little more clearly so you know where I'm coming from. And I did that in my last talk, which is why I wanted to ask you all if there's enough of you. Yes, it was awesome. Thank you. There was enough of you in the last workshop that I gave that were in the last workshop that I feel like I can talk a little bit about my background without repeating myself. I did my undergrad at UC Berkeley, so I am for somebody who's from the Bay Area, so I sort of stuck around the Bay Area. I started actually in physics And I quickly switched to atmospheric science within earth and planetary sciences because I had some really amazing research opportunities, which led me to just become obsessed with atmospheric science and really feel like that was where my life was taking me as a climate scientist. And so I made that switch. I also started working early on in my career in science education. So I worked at the Lawrence Hall of Science, which is a science museum at UC Berkeley. If you've ever been to the Lawrence Hall of Science, you'll know it's a beautiful place. I started working there as an undergrad, and I continued to work there after I graduated. And I really was at this point in my life where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do right after that. So was I going to go into graduate school? Was I going to continue in a career in science education? And I did choose to go to stay in science. And I did that because I conducted a ton of informational interviews. I asked folks, what would you do if you were me? I'm really, really interested in science communication. I really am interested in science policy. I'm really interested in how scientists bring science into the public sphere. And I didn't super know what that meant. I just knew that that's where my passion was, but I still loved science. And so a lot of folks encouraged me to continue as a scientist so that once I obtained a PhD, I was able to transition into any career I want, which is actually really great advice. And there's a debate around whether or not it's useful to get an advanced degree. And for anyone who wants to specifically have a conversation with me about what I think you might want to do at this stage in your career, if you're thinking about a transition, you're more than welcome to email me. I'm at rossiter@berkeley.edu. I do have a lot of people who are like, do you think it's worth it to do X, Y, and Z? Or what would you do in my situation? And I would give you advice or help you move through that. So I did continue in grad school. I studied clouds and aerosols and their effects on climate. So I'm a cloud scientist. I love cloud science. If anybody out there wants to talk more about clouds, I'm here for that. While I was in grad school, I wanted to stay grounded. I wasn't entirely obviously happy as a scientist because I knew I was never going to be a bench scientist. And back then, that was very fringe to be out and open about not wanting to be a scientist who works at a bench. I think that a lot of times throughout our careers, either we get jaded or we'll change our mind or we'll find out about new opportunities, which is what I'm hoping that today will do for you. And you make a career transition kind of in the moment. But I entered a scientific space knowing I wasn't going to be a scientist in a lab. So I did have to keep that secret for a bit until I got there. And then once I felt comfortable in my PhD program, it was sort of just known. And in order to kind of maintain sanity as I worked through 6 years of a PhD program, I became a AAAS Mass Media Fellow, as Tiffany mentioned, which is working, teaching scientists how to be better communicators, working with the media and bringing that either into an alternative career path or into back into academia and industry where we can just be better communicators as scientists. I also worked in the graduate division, working on diversity efforts. So this is when I started thinking about diversity and equity and inclusion at a university level, at an institutional level, and how that kind of affected my career and affects young career scientists or any career level scientist, but specifically how we're being more inclusive in science and science communication. And my next talk with you all next month is specifically on systemic racism and inclusion in science communication. I hope you join me for that one. That's definitely one of my favorite workshops I give. I finished after all these experiences, I graduated, and what I'm going to focus on today is this point in my life where I realized I had no idea how to get an academic job, and neither did anyone around me. So I'm going to talk a lot more about that place and where I was and how I made that transition. And since making that transition and understanding how to navigate careers, it's become a mission of mine to help people figure this out, to talk about it, to be explicit about it, to have conversations about it, and to really teach folks how to promote themselves in a way that's going to advance their career in all different ways. Since finishing, I've had a really rich career. I became the director of the AAAS Messina Fellowship Program right after finishing my PhD. That program expanded. I created a Spanish language branch of that program. I run a ton of SciComm courses in whether or not you're a climate scientist or not. I do a ton of engagement work and outreach work. This is me at some work I did at the White House. I run huge events for scientists. This is the March for Science. And again, this last one, I worked for Science. So AAAS also is a nonprofit that owns Science, the magazine and the journal. And so I started thinking about careers. And this is actually, I used to go to all of the minority research conferences and talk about careers and opportunities and all of these things with minority scientists, again, which sort of has created this package, this kind of tool set that I use and that I share with folks who are interested in understanding how to, again, a ton of you are here who are in transitions or who are going from one career stage to another career stage. So back to this, me not knowing what the heck I was doing. Okay. So we all are in these life-changing moments when you're sort of sitting there like, what do I do next? I finished. This was super exciting. And it was also incredibly scary because I was immersed in an academic environment. Even at the Lawrence Hall Science, I had jobs, but that job was in an academic setting. There was this idea I was always going to go back to school. And so again, and that job I had as an undergrad. So I've had a lot of course, since I was like 14 or 15, having job, but now I have an advanced degree, and this degree should mean something. And this degree should transfer in a way that isn't just for one career path. This is what I was thinking in my head, right? So as I'm finishing, everyone knew I was at this juncture in my life. And even though I had said I didn't want to be a bench scientist, and all of my friends and all of the people who cared for knew this, I was constantly being bombarded with postdocs, like apply for this postdoc, apply for that postdoc. And I had to say, I don't want the postdocs, right? And my advisor, well, I'll just say that ever since then, as I said, I've created this tool set where I now help people to think about these things. And one of the things that I did, or that happened a few years after that, was when somebody in my lab came to me and they said, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. I don't know really how to get a job. I don't know what I'm doing. And our advisor at the time couldn't help. And one of the things, and she seemed very frustrated that he couldn't help. And I was like, well, why would he be able to help? He's born an academic. He went straight from undergrad into a graduate school, into a postdoc. His parents were academics. How could he advise us on getting a job? And even if he did advise us on getting a job, would it be the right advice, right? Because he was going down an academic path. And so again, this is one of the situations where now we're in a world, I think, where we're a lot more open. This was, 15 years ago. We're a lot more open about there's only 5 academic jobs for the 200, 300, 400 people who are finishing their PhDs. So again, this is why I now talk a lot about careers away from the bench, alternative careers in science. We talk about transferable skills, which I have a whole slide on that. Talk about self-marketing. And now there's entire conferences. I allude to this one called Beyond Academia Conference, and that is hosted at several universities, one being UC Berkeley, where that's the whole conference is about careers away from an academic environment. And I'm not here to hate on academic environments. Of course, this presentation is relevant for academics. It's relevant for staying in academia. It's relevant for leaving academia. It's relevant for preparing for careers away from the bench. If you're a scientist who's in the audience, it's for folks who are applying for fellowships or leadership positions. And the great part about fellowships and leadership positions is they come up throughout your entire career. So regardless of what stage of your career you're in, you should be applying for things that will further accelerate your career, like fellowships and leadership positions. This is relevant for advising students. This might be also mentorship, may be connected to that, right? So either you're in your advanced stages of your career, or you're talking to students, you're interacting with students, or people who are earlier in their careers, and people who, again, are beginning or changing their careers, which I saw a lot of folks in the audience. So this is relevant for everyone. I want to just get one thing out of the way, is that this is self-promotion is not bragging. It's a way to articulate your value and your worth. So this can be very, very hard on us. This can be especially for, I'll say, women and for people of color, especially, and I'm not saying it's not for people who aren't women or people of color, but this is what, kind of the scientific enterprise has looked like historically. So it's a situation in which it's going to be more important oftentimes, and unfortunately, for women and people of color in academic or in scientific environments, or in library environments, or it really doesn't matter, but it should be an environment where we all feel comfortable doing this, and this is not something that all of us generally feel comfortable doing. So I really love this meme kind of on the side, and I saw it and was like, I have to add this to my presentation, right? So millennials aren't buying diamonds. Why? We're too busy filling out job applications that ask them to check their resume and then enter what's on the same resume into the next page. I love that, because if you've applied for a job in the last 10 years, this is everything. It's just entering fields into application sites. A few years ago, I was in Mexico with my family. And at one point I was like, I got to apply for this job. It came up. It's perfect. So I'm going to skip the beach today. Well, 3 days go by and my aunt is like, what are you doing? And I said, there's 10 essay questions. There's fields. There's this, there's that. There's all these things we need to, that I need to enter to apply for this job. And she was like, applying for jobs is nothing like what it used to be if you're doing all of that nonsense. And she's 65, 70 years old at this point. Of course, you just don't walk into a company and ask for a job and get the job, or even just submit the resume anymore, right? So lots of letters of recommendations, lots of essay questions. 5 years ago, I was applying for jobs, and this is when my aunt was making these comments. I had a ton of essay questions. 2 years ago, I didn't have any essay questions. So are we changing the way that I should say we're definitely changing the way that we have to promote ourselves. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, virtual interviews were not a thing. We were on the phone or we were in person. I never even had an option for a virtual interview up until 3 years ago. So this is ways in which we're having to basically figure out different ways to promote ourselves. We're going to we have to be flexible. We're going to have to think really critically and take time to think about how we're promoting ourselves in all of these different ways. Diversity statements. Again, I had never seen asked for a diversity statement up until my last round. So 3 years ago, I had never given a presentation 10 years ago. And now I've never entered a job where I'm not giving a presentation. That could be timing, right? So again, how the times are changing, we're expected to give presentations. And again, it could also be my career phase. So I'm in a phase in my career where they're going to ask me to give a presentation. I've had to do lessons plans. I've had to do timed writing prompts. So all of these things, depending on the job, depending on the time, right? How, the technology is changing. We're going to have to be figuring out how to change the way we promote ourselves. And I just want to say that what I'm going to tell you for the rest of this talk is going to be relevant in all of these different settings. Again, it just takes a bit of time. I'm going to note that cover letters and resumes have remained pretty standard. And so for the most part, if you're writing a cover letter or a resume, they're not going to go to waste. And I am definitely a fan of integrating, and if I don't think I have this point anywhere, integrating the job application wording into the resume. If you all are in government settings, we know how important that is, so I won't harp on that, but just making sure that the words, the application, the job posting is incorporated both in our cover letters and in our resume. So first tip I have is record everything. So this is not, and if you're mid-career, this might be not news to you. If you're early career, I'm telling you now, start now. If you haven't, why don't I also say, Tiffany, or, anyone who's managing the chat, because I'm not looking in that direction. If there's any questions, you're more than welcome to ask me questions in the chat, and people are more than welcome to interrupt me in case that needs to happen.
Nothing yet.
Okay, great. So key classes, if you're a student, I wrote classes up there to make sure that I was including students into this, how we talk about promoting ourselves. Key classes, key projects, key assignments. Record, keep everything. Workshops, even if it's a 1-hour workshop, right? I went to this 1-hour workshop. It doesn't matter. It was a workshop. Conferences you've attended. Again, was it a 1-day conference? Was it a half-day conference? It doesn't matter. Write it down. Don't forget that you went to those. What sessions did you go to at that conference that might be useful in your career later? Every single volunteer opportunity, I want you to count them individually. If I was a tutor and I said I was a tutor for a year, all right, did I tutor for 10 hours? Did I tutor for 400 hours? That's going to make a difference. Make sure things like that. Was I on a selection committee? How many selection committees were I on? Now that I do a lot of presentations, save my flyers, save my schedules, save my agendas, because I want to be able to take all of this information and all of these experiences that I have over the course of my career that are going to be incredibly rich and detailed, and compress them. And I want to compress them so that I can share a ton of information in a way that's very effective. So here, this is one of the very, this is updated. I have synergistic activities. I'm on 2 boards. And now I'm the secretary of both of these boards actually, so I would add that. And then these numbers, I've given keynotes, I've given career SciComm or diversity presentation or workshops, now it's 48, right? Or 49, because I've done the 2 with you all. I've judged presentations. I've been on, and this can say anything you want. You decide what's relevant. And again, synergistic activities are these activities that are outside of the normal breadth of what you would be writing in a job application, where you have a job resume where you have a ton of experience that you're trying to get through on 1 or 2 pages. We want to keep our resumes to 1 or 2 pages. And so this is a ton of information I can add in a diagram. And if you're anyone, I would say if you're a scientist, but if you're anyone, you know how critical having visuals in any type of communication is. And that seems a little crazy to have a visual in a resume, but guess what? It's effective. It's appealing to the eyes. People who are reading your resume are going to be drawn there. It helps to break up a sea of text. So adding things like, and this pie chart, for example, does not add up to 100, right? These are just like boxes, but it's a pretty box. These are pretty wedges, pretty arcs, pretty colors that, again, draw folks' eyes into something that's not just a sea of text. And once again, I'll repeat, compresses a ton of information into a way that's very, very accessible for folks. All right. Download everything. When you're ready to leave a job, or when you're ready to kind of think about your accomplishments, we want to download things. I know this, again, might seem like duh to some of you in your advanced career, but this is something I wish I had known. I want to save everything by year and by project, because right now, everything I've been doing in the last 3 years is on my work computer. The things that are not owned by my work, the things that I brought to my work, like better processes or better, or again, these types of things that you might not think are important, like flyers and such, download everything so that you have them on your personal computer. Again, if they're not proprietary, if they're not owned by anyone else. I've always worked for nonprofits. These are things that are my things and their things that I can use as examples for ways in which I've been successful at my job. You might want to download them by year. You might want to download them by project. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you have them and they're organized. I talk a little bit about CVs here only because CVs are a really, really, really useful way to include everything you've ever done in the face of your career, right? And these are not things that I typically use because I've left. I have a career outside of bench science, but I do have a CV and I do add every single thing that I'm doing to that CV because it's a good way to organize what I'm doing. Again, they're not beautiful, but they include everything as opposed to a resume, which excludes a lot of things just because there's a lack of space. One thing I want to note is that if you are in a space where it's been 2 or 3 years and you haven't been doing haven't been keeping up on organizing your accomplishments, what I would say is your calendar is going to be a gold mine because all of your entries about what you're doing, again, maybe the conferences you're going to, the presentations you're giving, the key, events that are happening in your career or in your school, they're going to be captured in the calendar. So again, that's a gold mine to keep everything on a calendar in case you need to go back and look and see what you've done. I even add, like if I have I just had a round of abstracts that I was reviewing for a minority conference, and I add that abstracts are due, make sure, and I add that to my calendar, but then it's also a way to remember, oh yeah, I did that abstract review. And I don't have that on my resume now, but I need to add that, right? And so I can look at my calendar and I'll be there. If you're leaving a job, again, transfer your work calendar into your personal calendar or download your calendar or share your calendar so that all of these things don't disappear when you're in your new job. So that you, again, can see kind of the arc of your career. Don't miss or assume that you know what you did. That people know what you did. Sorry, you're responsible for what you're promoting and what you're promoting either within a job or when you're transferring or transitioning. So I want to say about reviews is that oftentimes people in certain job areas don't have to do reviews, and other job areas it's like required. And for UC Berkeley, they're every single 3 months. And so it's a really, really nice way to stay abreast of what you're doing. But I've had jobs where I didn't do a review at all. I went 2 or 3 years without a single review. And so it was really my responsibility to be keeping track of my accomplishments. And so I just want to, again, emphasize that a review is a really, really nice way to keep track of those things. But if you're not forced to do reviews, then you're just not going to do it. So like it has to come from yourself. But this is just me telling you to, again, even though you think your supervisor may know your accomplishments, you're responsible for writing them down and to make sure that you're promoting yourself even in your reviews. I have these photos here to highlight some things. They're not just me because I love putting up photos of myself. They're to remind me to tell you to download everything and to organize your accomplishments. Even a lot of these things I'm telling you to download are because they're visual representations of what you've done, which is going to be really useful when you're doing things like giving presentations, when you're doing things like creating a website, and when you're doing things like creating a handheld portfolio. So these are things that are beautiful. And again, they're a bit like this, the plot here, this pie chart here is that they're a way to talk about your experiences, to talk about your accomplishments in a way that's visually appealing, and people really are drawn in that way. If again, you went to my SciComm talk, I talk about this, right? Visually appealing photos or visually appealing pots can really be a way in which we pull people in. This is to tell you that I went and did a career talk at an elementary school once, and this little girl asked for my autograph like I was famous, which was so cute that a friend snapped a photo of it, which I was very grateful for. There was fire people there, and they asked for my autograph. So I was really famous in that moment. But anyways, the point is that I posted that photo on Instagram. I ran it through a filter and then I lost my phone. And so now all I have is this like gross Instagram filtered photo of this autograph, being asked for, which I wish I had downloaded this photo and put it in a safe space because I don't have that anymore. I went and gave a presentation at the American Meteorological Society conference. And at the end of the conference, I got a Dear Dr. Rossiter or Dear Dion Rossiter. Yes, it was addressed to me and it had information about the conference and it was thanking me. And I was like, did they go ahead and take a picture of every single person and send it to them personalized? Because this was to me and that's a picture of me. And then all my friends who went to the AMS conference were like, hey, you're famous. There's a photo of you, right? In this banner image. So what did I do? I went to the AMS website. I figured out who the public information officers were. I figured out who the marketing team was. I figured out who was in conference, promotion or whatever. And I emailed all of them and I said, hey, I just noticed I'm in this banner image. Do you have any other images of me? Or can I have that image? Because that's a good image, right? That's a really great image. I said, can I have that image for self-promotion? What did they do? They sent me a whole file, a whole Google Drive of 20 photos that had been taken of me at the conference. And so now I have these professional photos of me by accident because I happened to be on the cover of this banner and I happened to take the initiative to go email folks. So take the initiative if you're at a conference and you see a professional photographer taking a photo of you to make sure you ask them or talk to them or say, where are these photos going to be published? Or maybe after the conference, contact the conference organizers and say, where were those photos? Because I saw people taking photos of me and I'd like them. This is my headshot thing, right? Where I'm like, oh my goodness. Of course, when I'm 25 years old, I totally thinking this is an adorable shot. And now I'm regretting wearing a hot pink tank top, but that's fine. This was a great photo for grad school promotion. But I never worked in a space where I had an opportunity to get a headshot. I'm working at nonprofits. They don't have a lot of money. I'm not hiring people to do headshots for me. And so again, I'm at a different conference and there's a photographer running around. And this is after this experience. And I asked the photographer, hey, would you like taking a photo of me? Because I haven't had a headshot done since I was 25 years old. And this photographer said, yeah, sure. This is in LA in a parking lot. He like climbed up on a car to take this photo so that the tree was in the background just so he could get the perfect shot to send to me. And there I had a headshot for free. So take those initiatives, find people, because again, this is going to be meaningful for you when you're building your portfolios or when you're building your resumes and all of these things. Again, you're going to want visual representations. So that's just my reminder to you to really be proactive in these situations, ask people to take photos. So moving on to sort of my third tip, which is about rooting for yourself. I want us all to have an accomplishment mindset. I have examples like coordinate. We want to use words like manage or direct. Not that I think coordinate's a bad word, but manage or direct something is a lot more, again, kind of accomplishment mindset-y. Like we're actually managing this project. We're directing this project. If you did something independently, say you did it independently, because that means that allows you to own that project. If it was part of a team, teamwork is great too. And teamwork means that there's all these things, obviously positive things that go along with working in teams. But again, I think independently is really important. If it was independent, you should state that. We want to quantify our value and our worth. And I'll give you some examples on the next slide. So what I mean by that is I want statistics. Again, we talked a little bit about counting numbers and counting accomplishments and counting experiences. But I also want to know when you're describing your work in your resume or in your portfolio, tell me what that means, really what that means. And again, I'll give you an example using numbers. I'll give you multiple examples and you'll get these slides. I don't know if that's been mentioned, but I see, are there any questions in the chat? I'm glad you guys are talking to each other so that other people's expertise are added. But just again, let me know if you want me to clarify anything. But I can see that people are talking about the differences between resumes and CVs. So that's great. So I wrote, this is actually excerpts from different resumes that I've had. And you'll see that one of my bullets under my accomplishments is I independently, again, manage, these are two great words, all aspects, so everything of blank thing, including fundraising, program development, and implementation. And this is a very general statement, a normal statement that you'd see in a resume. So I've added some accomplishments. Accomplishments include 80% increase in outside funding in 2 years, increasing from 12 to 20 awards, a program goal last met in 2002. So what that means is I've done something in 2 years that hadn't been done in 12 years or 10 years or whatever it was. And I think that just saying this little bit of numbers and quantifying this about how I've been good at fundraising and program development and implementation gives us something very concrete. I develop and implemented X, resulting in 100% of external funding after 1 year of implementation. I developed and administered for the first time in 40-year history. So instead of just saying I did this thing, I said, this is the first time this thing has been done in 40 years. The first time, right? I created an alumni survey. This is my response rate, while simultaneously improving and increasing the alumni database from 81, again, the numbers, right? 81 to 369 out of 400. Okay. So again, I'm adding this is how I can quantify my accomplishment. It keeps changing slides on me accidentally. I could go on, maybe, yes, money, serving people, how many people I served, how much money I raised. I tripled the amount of nominations, blah, blah, blah. So you get this sense for where I'm going with this, is I can say a statement and then I can really back it up with some information. All right. Now, this is something that I heard on a podcast once, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Academic positions or academic folks or scientists or people who are in academic spaces, they think in terms of degrees, whereas people who are in non-academic spaces or maybe even non-governmental spaces think about things in terms of skills, right? And this is so true. And I was at an Association for Women in Science conference once, and I was talking to a woman who was in her 5th postdoc. So, right, she's finished her PhD. She's done postdoc after post. I don't know, at 5th. It was a lot of postdocs. I remember that. And she said the only reason she's going through all of these postdocs is because she's not equipped to do anything else but do research science, even though she was done being a research scientist. And it a bit broke my heart in that moment, because I wanted to take her by the shoulders and shake her and say, you are so incredibly skilled to do so many things. Let me help you think about the ways in which your work in X, Y, and Z scenario, your projects, your lab work, your school work, all of these experiences that you've had, let's think about them instead of postdocs, but think about them in terms of skill set, unique skill set. And I'm really, I'm going to take a pause. So maybe I don't even want you to read these just yet, because I'm going to pause to say that I am a true and firm believer that our skill sets, whether they're in health science, library science, physics, astronomy, our skill sets are applicable for every single career sector. We should be in education. We should be in policy. We should be in media. We should be in industry. We should take over all of these spaces, because if we exclude scientists from those spaces, then we are running rampant on things like, misinformation of vaccine efficacy, or the result of harmful environmental policies which go through our government, or whatever. You fill in the blanks as it relates to media and industry and how harmful those are. And we are developing leaders which have all of these skill sets that why would we want to have them all in one specific place known as academia, right? We want our skill sets to spread. And so that was one thing I wanted to tell this person, this woman that I talked to, that we don't want to exclude ourselves from these spaces, and you are incredibly skilled in a million different ways. So let's just go through the ones on the left. These are ones that I think that we probably know, that folks who are in academic settings or in any kind of science space or non-science space, but in academic space, maybe ability to gather and interpret information. I wrote here background information to say that's what we do when we're collecting background information, right? The ability to collect and analyze information and data. Of course, as professionals and scientists, we do that. Oral and written communication, that absolutely is expected of us. We're always communicating, right? Both written and oral. Ability to make decisions, to troubleshoot, and to solve problems. Again, we're in the field, we're in the lab, we're in our offices, we're working on projects, working on programs. Things always don't go the way that they're supposed to, right? We have to troubleshoot. We have to make decisions on the fly, right? We have to problem solve. Our ability to learn quickly. We're in a learning environment all the time. Our ability to manage a project. My first job at AAAS said, this job, you need 5 to 10 years of project management experience. I told my advisor, I can't apply for this, or I'm going to apply anyways, even though I'm not super equipped because I'm not equipped because it says 5 to 10 years of project management experience. He said, what do you mean? You managed your PhD? And I said, I did manage my PhD. So I managed a research project around my PhD work, my thesis work, and there I can think about how that was a project in and of itself. What was the start? What was the middle? What was the end? What did I learn? What were the things that what changes? How did I troubleshoot? How did I problem solve? Again, all of these things are incorporated into that project. But in that moment, I didn't have that skill set mindset. We're creative and we're innovative thinkers. Of course, when we're doing work or science, we have to be creative and innovative. Now, on the other side, these are things that we don't typically think. And I'm going to use this as experience with, again, wanting to shake all of the young people I meet, where I just want to tell them how amazing, how brilliant, and how skilled they are. We can digest very, very, very highly technical information. We can explain very, very, very highly technical information. Instead of saying, I TA'd a class. No, you were able to explain highly technical information. You see how different that is when we think about ourselves as I just had this experience TAing versus I did this thing that was huge. I explained this X, Y, and Z crazy complicated data set or equation or whatever to 30 people who are now experts in that. Okay? We digest, we explain. If you're in the government, if you're in academic environments, you have navigated complex and bureaucratic environments. I promise you that. This is a bullet point saying I've worked for the government or I work for a university, right? So you can say you've navigated complex systems. I promise you can. You've created new and efficient processes. Again, people aren't thinking about their works in labs or their works in the classroom as new and effective processes, but that's what you're doing. Fiscal and management and budget creation. If you're more senior in your career, you're going to be like, yep. How important is it that somebody has fiscal management and budget creation? Guess what? If you've been in grad school and you've already done that. You've had a budget for your lab. You've had a budget on your proposal. You've made sure you've stayed within your budget. You've gone on field project. You've budgeted. It's all written out. The fact that you've done that is a skill set. And these, again, are not things that people think of when they're thinking about who they are as scientists. That's not something they typically would write on a resume or boast about themselves. But I guarantee it's something that any workforce is going to value. Data management. You're insanely skilled. people coming out of academic environments are very, 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 very naturally skilled set. Not naturally, they've learned throughout their careers, their academic careers, how to use data and how to use Excel in a very effective way. Every time I've ever come into a workplace, even if it's in an administrative setting, I've known more about Excel than anyone around me, even though they've been in these environments for 20 to 30 years in a workplace, because I had to learn the new and greatest technologies and how to navigate huge data sets because of my research. And that is something that I don't think, again, people in academic environments even understand, that they have a way of navigating data that is not normal. It's exceptional. And I don't have this here, but I think I might have it later. But I just want to point out, in case I miss it, Adobe Suite. That's another space where I came into, I left an academic setting and became the expert in my office on the Adobe Suite, not because I had taken classes on the Adobe Suite and not because I was in an office environment or a marketing, trained in marketing where I had to learn Adobe Suite. It's because I was a scientist and I created posters for conferences in the Adobe Suite. So again, these are things that, and now all of a sudden I'm the expert out of the 20 people in my office because I just came out of grad school with that experience. Proposal writing, again, these are things that we take for granted as scientists. We're constantly begging for money, and any job is going to love you if you know how to beg for money. So take that skill set and turn it into something that can be very useful for a different kind of job than, again, either in science or in academia.
We do have a question.
Oh, sure.
Okay, this is from LL, and it says it's a mid-career question, and it's how far back seems reasonable for keeping track and sharing info?
Oh, that's a good question.
They're asking for a friend who likes to hoard info, but doesn't want to be cringy with sharing really outdated stuff.
I don't think the outdated aspect super applies. It's the relevance aspect. Is it relevant? I think it's fine to have everything that all of your accomplished, all of your data, all of these experiences, but you need to pick and choose. Every single resume you're writing should be tailored to the job. Every single experience that you're bringing up in a job interview should be tailored for that job. So especially if you're changing careers, I think that it's fine to look back into when I applied for a job, my first job at AAAS, I didn't add, I'll talk about this. I had a physical portfolio that I showed them, and which was like, I feel like the fact that I pulled out a portfolio meant that I got this job. Like, it was like, who is this person, right? Like, she brought a portfolio with her. And one of the things that I didn't add to the portfolio was work I had done as an undergrad, where I wrote a proposal to the university to get our after-school program funded. And this had a budget, and this had goals and stuff that were developed by the university. And I didn't add that because I thought it was too far in the past. And in my interview, they were like, oh, we really would have loved to have seen that. That's super relevant to what we're doing now. And of course, looking back, of course it was relevant. It was about working in an education space. It was about writing a proposal, even though it wasn't a ton of money. It was about getting that and having goals that were associated with that funding opportunity as an undergrad. But I thought it's too far in the past, right? And in reality, it was super applicable. So that was an example where I made the mistake because it was just so long ago. So I wouldn't necessarily exclude things that are from the distant past. I would just decide whether or not it's relevant to that job specifically. And that's how you weed out. I would love for you all to have everything organized in a filing system and I'll show you how I do it when I think about my portfolio. And when I am applying for an opportunity, I decide, like, listen, I've hosted 100 events, science events in my career. I mean, literally, right? I do it 5 times a month now. in my current job. So if I've hosted all those events, but my next career might be solely in written communication, then I might say I've hosted 100 events, but I'm not going to go into detail. Whereas if I want to be working for TEDx, my entire resume would be about my event management and my event experience as opposed to my written communication. Right? So really being able to hand select which things are really important to you. And if you guys want to see my exact examples of how I do this, I can send them to you. I have a really, 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 really long Word document where it says project management and then has a ton of text about my project management skills. This is for my cover letters. Then it will say event management, and I have a lot of text about event management. And then it says about written communication. It has a ton of text about written communication. It has diversity, equity, and then it has a ton of text. And I have like 20 of these. And when I go to write a resume, I'm like, which ones are relevant? Because this might not be, it's like a menu where I can just pull and choose all of the different text I have. It's so helpful, right? So that's a way for me to not have to really spend a ton of time rewriting cover letters. I have like a bank of words that I've written, and I can just pull from that bank depending on what the job is asking for. So that was a little bit of a segue, but I think isn't that helpful? When I send that to people, they're like, holy crap, like this is so cool. You could even do like Word, now you can do the thing in Google Docs where you can just like have headers and go to those headers so you can pull out the relevant information. But that would be my suggestion on how I think courting in this scenario is perfectly fine as long as you don't try to put everything out into the open when you're ready to present it. All right. So I hope that answered your question.
We have another question for you.
Uh-huh.
This one is from Brenda. Hopefully, I know you kind of touched on this, but I don't think you explained it fully.
Okay.
What is the difference between a CV and a resume?
Oh,
her
right.
resume and her cover letter are both lengthy, she had mentioned.
Yeah. So thanks. Maybe I'll add for next time just a description of what those things are exactly. And I did see some people talking about that in the text, so that's great. So what a cover letter or what a resume are your CV and resume is what we're asking about, right? Okay, so a CV is it's a list essentially. Maybe it's a list of your, degrees. Then it's a list of the experiences you've had. And then it's a list of your papers you've published. It's a list of presentations you've given. It's a list. So these are it's a way to present yourself almost in list form. It's not flowery wording or anything like that. And that's typically what a CV is. And you can go online and Google sample CVs and find them. They're also typically not formatted in any kind of special way. In fact, I would suggest you leave the formatting to a minimum because it really is meant to just be a source of data about who you are and what you've done. Whereas a resume is going to be sectioned by your experiences and your skills and your accomplishments. So that my bullet points that I used were me showing you excerpts from my resume. And I'll say that in your resume, it has to be very tight because it really should only be 1 or 2 pages. Nobody wants to see a 3-page resume, whereas a CV can be 20, 30, it really doesn't matter. And the reason I'm saying that, and this is from my experience, in the last year, I've been on 4 hiring committees and both where people turn in resumes and cover letters. And I know that when I get I know that when I get a CV, it could be 100 pages long. And I know that, and that's fine. I'm not going to be mad at a long CV. Whereas if I get a resume that's more than 2 pages, I'm like, honestly, I could have helped that person turn their 5-page resume into a 2-page resume where it's more effective because it's telling me information that I want to see. And it's not this hoarder mentality where you're sharing everything. I'm only sharing the things that are relevant to the job I'm applying for, and can highlight my skill set in a way that's very succinct. Whereas again, the cover letter will have everything. And writing an effective resume is hard. So if one of the tips I will use is seek out help. There's free resume writing workshops. There's writing resume guides on LinkedIn and all of these job sites. I'm more than happy to go over your resume with you. So if you want to help me go through and make it a really effective resume, I can help you do that. And your universities will have resume writing folks in their career centers who can help you. Utilize those. Again, CV, all there, not hard. Resume is a little hard, especially if you're in the mentality where you have a lot you want to share. Or if you're just coming out of grad school and you feel like you don't have, or undergrad and you feel like you don't have anything to share. You should see my little sister's resume when she graduated from high school. It was like what she started with and what I created for her. It was like night and day. And again, none of these are lies. I'm just really good at saying, no, you did this thing and it was really cool. And let's highlight that thing. And she was just in high school, right? So we can do this in any stage of our careers. That's the difference between a resume and a CV. And jobs are going to say what they want. And if they may say resume or CV, and I always lean on the resume. And I lean on submitting resumes instead of CVs because I can talk about, I feel like I want to talk about my accomplishments in my resume in a way that you can't in a CV because it's just kind of listed stuff. The other thing is that a lot of my jobs are quite naturally about promotion, whether it's about promoting science. My entire career is about promoting science, promoting scientists. And so because of that, I use my resume as an avenue for showing how good I am at presenting data and presenting information. I'm about to hire a job, which is a half events person, like for Science at Cal, where I work now, which is half events and half marketing. If they turn in a resume that isn't well written, isn't succinct, isn't visually appealing to the eyes, then that says something about how well they market. And the job is marketing. So if they turn in a resume that isn't any three of those things, then it's basically like they're submitting a project or a portfolio to me via their resume because of that. And so I think that that's a reason why I choose resume. It's because it's a way for me to be expressive. It's a way for me to be creative, and it's a way for me to share information I think is relevant to the job. Again, as opposed to the CV. So that's how I choose which one I'm going to turn in. And for you, it might be different. And I would say everyone's different, but I would say have both on hand so that you can, even if you're not ever turning in a CV, you can reference the CV to help put information into your resume, if that makes sense. Like what I was saying, it was because you list everything in the CV, it's nice to have because you can add things that are relevant to your resume. And the cover letter, my suggestion for organizing the cover letter is doing what I said I did, which is having one big bank of text where you have all of like kind of your skill sets, like I said, event planning, communication, diversity and equity. So you're having the data management, whatever your skill set is for you, create those pockets of text that you can pull from. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Not right now, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm just reading something about academics are layer of those outside of academia. That's totally true. And there's this idea of if you left an academic environment from being an academic environment, then something must be wrong with you, right? And also you couldn't cut it. And I get that a lot and it drives me crazy. So I'm screaming from the rooftops every moment I can that people who are not in academic environments are valuable and smart and brilliant and creative just as much as their academic counterparts, because the academics have this idea that they live in this like superior ivory tower. And I'm saying this coming from, I work at a university, so I can say this, I promise. I'm not offending anyone, but that's a typical attitude of folks in academia. And we really need to cut that out, because what that does is it makes scientists who think they are failures when they leave to go do other things, which again, I'm going to scream from the rooftops about how important it is that we have scientists in every sector. So why would we want to demean or skilled workforce in every sector? So why do we want to demean folks who are outside of academia? Like, that is just so counterproductive. It's insane. I went and applied for a job at an academic institute, at a research institution, a very big, a very famous one, and they had their women numbers were, women in their workforce was incredibly low, and their numbers of people of color were incredibly low. Like, I would have been one of 5 people of color in this huge organization, and I would have been one of 10% of the women who were in this organization. And they went and called my advisor to ask them why I had left academia and if they thought I was a valuable scientist, or was prolific, or I was worthy, or if I was intellectual, when the job I was applying for had nothing to do with my science, it didn't even require a PhD. But they were like, well, she left academia, something must have been wrong with her. And it infuriated me. And when I got offered the job and I didn't accept the job, and when they asked me why I didn't accept, I told them that. I said, it is offensive that you would go and act like something was my PI from grad school was like, oh my gosh, they were so rude, and made it sound like you were below them because of this. So anyways, just coming to these comments and just pointing out there's something that needs to change about the way in which we are. And again, I think having academics leave academia is a good thing for all of us, and in the world, and in kind of this space where we think something's wrong with folks when they leave. Again, I'm going to come back to kind of my tips. One is utilizing these software and these websites. Folks, we're all techies at this point. If you're, especially, I feel like even I'm learning, I'm, like I said, it's like, it's a hard pill to swallow that I'm not early career, that I'm mid-career. And it's the same when technology is evolving and you're like, oh, shoot, I need to keep up, right? Websites like Weebly, I use Weebly to create my website, and Wix, Google Sites. These are all amazing. They're all free. They cost nothing. They're easy to use, user-friendly, all of these amazing things. For your resumes, flyers, talks, Canva now is incredibly, I use Canva for everything now. This talk was made in the Google Suite. So you can see this is just a template that I utilized that they have. I didn't have to do anything special to these slides. It existed in this really beautiful way. I just enter my text, right? So especially if you're building resumes now, again, like I said, having a resume that's has more of a flashy aspect to it, as opposed to that traditional kind of Word document resume that everyone had in the 90s. Creative Cloud, again, Adobe Spark is all free. For photos, all the photos you're seeing here came from a site called Unsplash, if you hadn't heard of it, which is all free data photos, and not all. Now they have photos that you can purchase, but there's always photos that are free and that you don't have to attribute. As long as you're not making money off of the photos, you can use the photos as you like. For colors, I hummed and hawed over my website colors for longer than you'd want to know. And I wish I would have known about these color matching or color combo websites like Adobe Color and Coolers.co, which help you kind of give you guidance on how to mix and match colors. As simple or weird as that sounds, it's very effective. For fonts, there's all these different types of websites that help you select fonts that are going to be useful in your presentations or in your resumes or on your online stuff. Flowcharts, line maps, Tableau, timelines, Infogram, these are all websites. Draw is really, really good now. Google Draw is great. Icons, I use icons all over the place these days. They're really helpful in kind of sharing, if you have bullet points, instead of using bullets, you can use icons, and the Noun project is the perfect place to get those icons. And tracking apps. If you're applying for a lot of jobs, you can use Hunter to say where you are in the job process. Are you interviewing? Did you submit a resume? This is really helpful for folks who are maybe applying for several jobs all in one week or over the course of the month. So you know, okay, I need to check in with these people. I need to write my thank you notes. I need to, these are all things that are going to be helpful. Nurture relationships, find people who are going to root for you and hang on to them. Maintain those relationships with your colleagues and your mentors. Say thank you. Do something for them. Relationships are two-way streets. The reason I want to bring this up, these are my two Melissas, and these are people who we support each other in our careers. I have literally calendar checks on every 2 or 3 months. I might check in with somebody who writes my resumes for me and just be like, hey, how are you? What's going on in your life? How are you doing? Can I do anything for you? Because this is a way that we maintain and nurture relationships so that we can utilize folks and they can utilize us and create an environment where we all support each other. And again, I this might be duh for some of you, and it might be like, yeah, I'm not very good at this. That's a reminder. I need to maybe put that on my calendar to check in with people so that they know that, again, that we're not just using people to advance our careers, that we actually care for them. I've already mentioned kind of asking for feedback about as it relates to the resume. Have people read the resume, have your friends read your resumes, have people read your essay questions, have people read your cover letters. If I'm applying for my dream job, you're going to bet I'm going to send this to 5 people, right? My fellowship applications, my internships, my portfolio, my talks. When I give a job talk, I've always found my practice job talks when I ask a friend, hey, can you watch this? I'm giving a talk on X, Y, and Z for this job. Can you watch this? And I get the best feedback. Like my job talks go from good to great, amazing, because of the feedback I'm getting from people who are watching my job talks, right? So get that feedback. When I created my website, I sent my website to 6 people to review. I asked them each to provide kind of just general editing, like copy editing feedback, but then I also asked them to review my website. Like, if you stumbled on my website and wanted to contact me, could you do so pretty easily without having to look too hard? So how easy was it to find my email address, for example? Do you think I should create a contact me? I asked them questions about how my website was formulated so that they could give me feedback in an easy way. So this is kind of cool that they were like, whoa, like you asked all the right questions. Like, could you find my contact information? Was it organized in a way that you appreciated or understood? Did you like this? Did you not like this? Would you change this? Would you change that? So all of these things for building my website was really useful. And I asked 6 people for pretty detailed information about how they felt about it. I'm going to move on to references. I used to send thank you letters after interviews. Is still being done if you do Zoom interviews. I always send thank yous. I don't think, as all of you who are hiring folks, don't make that ever a do or a die. Do not judge people on whether or not they send your thank yous. But as somebody who's in interviews, I always send thank yous. So I would say yes. Can you briefly discuss ways to promote your research or scientific work? Yes. If I depending on who's in the room, I sort of formulate my talks to being more or less about this. I'll say a few things, but I want you to feel free to contact me so that we can do this together, because I have experience doing this in my own world and in folks who come to me's world. I had somebody who was graduating with their PhD and was applying for jobs, and she told me, I cannot get even an interview. I don't know what's going on with me. And I was like, okay, send me your stuff and I'll go through some cover letter resume things with you. She sent me her resume and cover letter, and I was like, this is why you're not getting jobs, because it was like her CV that was like collapsed into her resume. And because she couldn't do this, which is how promoting scientific work, your research or scientific work, right? And I said, oh my goodness, we need to talk. We need to go through this resume. And I went through it with her. And it occurred to me that, again, this is really hard for scientists to do. And so I will do the things that I talked a lot about, the skill set, a lot about formatting the way we think about our work in a scientific world besides research as journal conferences and journal articles. Again, think about them as projects. Think about them as ways in which you navigated a project in a way that was effective, in a way where you creating new processes, in a way that you were working on teams, where you're working with students, where you're working, outside or inside the field, where you, navigating data sets. Again, all of these things that were on the skill set, go through that skill set slide that I put out for you and go through each one of those bullets and decide whether or not that applied to every scientific project you've done. Or you look at the papers and say, okay, what went into these papers? Did a field project, did an experiment, did lab group meetings, did you start a journal club that met on a specific topic? That's huge. And again, I don't think that is something that somebody would be like, oh yeah, I did that thing and that's really neat. So that would be an entire bullet. Or maybe you're manager of that journal. Give yourself a title, manager of journal club. It's totally easy to do, and no one's going to fault you for that.
So we have another question.
Yeah.
Brenda's asking if you still do thank you letters after an interview.
Oh, I did.
Even if it's a Zoom interview?
Yeah, I tried to answer that, and I said I always send thank yous, yeah. But if you're in a hiring space, do not judge people on whether or not they do or don't. But I always send thank yous, and I suggest everyone send thank yous. But again, I don't want people to be making hiring decisions based on thank you interviews or thank you notes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So about references, I would be very strategic about who you ask. Again, like sort of a database of text, I would have a database of people that are very close with me and know my work. And ask yourself, and they're organized. How do they know me? How can they speak to my strengths? Each person should have a very unique insight into who you are. So, and I've done this where I'm like, these are the people who know me in this education space. These are the people who know me in a science space. These are the people who know me in a event planning space, yada, yada, yada. These are the people who know me in a fundraising space. Okay, so they can speak to my strengths in very different ways. And I have that here, funder, partner, committee member, colleague. They're going to know my work very intimately in very different ways. And that's good. We want a collection of people. We want a spectrum. You want to ask well in advance. When it comes time to pick your references, you want to make sure, again, you tell them and make sure that you're picking the 3 people who are most relevant to that job. If you add more than 3, list them in order of importance. When it comes time to have them to speak about you, you're going to send them all of your material. You're going to send them your resume. You're going to send them any presentations you've given. You're going to send them the cover letter, and you're going to send them the job posting. You're going to give them a packet of things that they can look at because somebody's going to call them and talk to them. And they're going to want to know what this job is about. So you're going to want to try to help them through that. You don't want them to figure it out themselves. You want to make sure they have everything they need. You also want to tell them how things went. So I had one job that I was applying for where I got the sense that people didn't feel like I could bring in money. And so I harped on that with my reviewers. I said, this is how it went. These are the things that they were harping on. And these are the things I want you to highlight for me. I was very deliberate about what I wanted them to focus on. Maybe you want them to focus on the perceived shortcomings, like I said, about raising funds. Those are the shortfalls I felt this hiring committee was seeing from me. And therefore, I was like, you guys need to boast me up in this way because these are what I think they think are my shortfalls. What do you want the selection committee to hear from the references or recommenders? After the call, I'm like, okay, when's your reference call? Okay, call me. I'm going to call you right after to see how it went. I'm so nosy. I'm like, And then I could use that information and tell the next reference because I know when everyone's scheduled calls are. Smart, right? So I call the one reference and I tell them all these things. I hear about how it went and then I maybe share that information with the next one. Some people hate this and some people are like, wow, that's genius. I write all of my own letters of recommendations. And then I send them to my recommenders and then I say, you can change whatever you want. And they go, no, it's fine. They just sign their names. So again, be strategic about how you ask, how they know you. And what I do is I focus on those 3 letters of recommendation on totally different things. Because all of a sudden you have like one person who's talking all about how amazing you are at project management, another person who's talking all about how good you are at education, and another person who's talking all about how good you are at running, I don't know, events, right? So this is how I do it. And then all of those things focus on that. So it looks like, oh my gosh, she has all these people talking about how amazing she is. And superlatives. You are the most amazing, the best. And it's so hard to do that when you're talking about yourself, but do it and it'll get more and more normal for you. Because that's how references and reviewers talk about people that they love, is they say, I love this person more than anyone else. So you should feel comfortable doing that. And again, some people hate that I write my own letters of recommendation and they think it's sleazy or something. But I've never had a letter recommender turn down that. They're like, well, thank you. And that's what it, and they never change anything.
I have a question for you. So this is Brenda again. She's asking, due to COVID-19 pandemic, only one of her references is still working. Otherwise, all of them have either retired or have moved or have passed away. So what do I do if I don't have 3 references that are usually asked for?
I don't think anyone has to be in a current job. I think being retired is fine. As long as they can speak to your skill sets in that space in which you know them. I don't see that being as a red flag at all.
Okay.
That's me personally. And if I got like, it might say retired when I write, because I have people that I add to my committee who are retired as well, but I say retired director of the Chemical Engineering Society or whatever. And that says a lot. Right. This is like the Barack Obama. It's fine to be like former president. Right. I still think that says a lot. I don't think that's a problem. Yeah. Some are forbid their staff from giving references. Yeah. True. So, you have to look in other spaces to find your references if that's the case. Okay, so back to this piece about where I was at this juncture and didn't know what to do, and you're probably thinking, then how did she figure it out? Because I kind of didn't talk about that. I just said I had no idea, and then all of a sudden I worked at AAAS, right? So what I did is I relied on my friends. I wanted to work for a nonprofit, so I sought out friends who worked in nonprofits. The idea of this portfolio that I've kind of alluded to was born. So I went through and created essentially started printing things out. This is in 2012. And this is before everyone had a website, which now I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of folks have websites at this point. And if you're high enough in your career, I encourage you to have a website there where you can create that portfolio space. In 2012, people didn't have websites really. They had, very, very, very basic websites if they had a personal website. And so I essentially started collecting all of these things that I was doing and I started organizing them. And now that's what my website is based. My portfolio section of my website is based on what my original physical portfolio looked like. And so there's things like public engagement, event management, communication training, outreach, marketing. And so you should create these spaces where you kind of think about your work in these areas. And when I went in and pulled out this portfolio for my interview in 2012 that was handheld, I said, as I've said, it was crazy. I look back on that and once I had that job and I was like, they probably were like, we can end this interview now. This person got this job because it was so like organized, right? It's a way to organize your experiences. It's a way to organize your thoughts, go through all of a sudden you'll think, oh my God, I did do that thing. Wow, that's really neat. It's a way to kind of bring it into the forefront of your mind so that you can talk about them during the interview. It's a way to visually guide people when they're asking you interview questions. And it's just impressive, right? It's somebody has cared enough to put this much organization into their work. It says a lot. I've created other people. I don't know why help is capitalized here, but in other organizations, and I've actually, because of my help creating their portfolios, one person got a job at National Geographic, another person got a science writer job at the New York Times because of this help creating their portfolio. I was hired on 4 committees last year, and again, while a physical portfolio isn't something people would do anymore, the website is. And so again, it's just a way to transfer your something physical or in filing system into a way that's very beautiful and into a way that gives so much information about who you are and what your skill set is. I want to let us listen to this. Let me see what. Okay. So I'm going to let us listen to something helping somebody create a way in which they talk about an elevator pitch. I was distracted for a second because of the time, but I want us to listen to this really fast. I asked the person, what do you do?
What I normally say is I'm a research scientist and I'm a cell biologist by training.
Okay. This person says, I'm a research scientist and I'm a cell biologist by training. Right? That's how she introduces herself. Okay. Then it was create an elevator pitch, and this was the elevator pitch.
I work for a cutting-edge gene therapy company to develop medications to treat disease. My part is early on in drug discovery process. I am the one that tests new drugs on human cells in the laboratory so we can weed out what does not work before we try it out on humans. This way, we can develop more effective drugs to better treat patients faster.
Okay, so that was asking to just create an elevator pitch on who she is and what she does. And in a workshop case, it would be like, okay, how many people did that? Do you understand? First of all, do you understand what she does? Now, if you understand what she does, can you tell somebody else what she does? That's a lot harder, right? So 45 minutes of going back and forth after hearing that, let's now hear this. This is a honed in, worked on elevator speech.
Every time a company develops a new drug to treat patients, it needs to be tested to see if it works. They used to test effectiveness on humans, usually on underprivileged population and inmates. This is obviously very unethical. What I do is lead a team to test new drugs in models of human disease in the laboratory so we can determine the right drug for the right disease. This leads to higher quality treatments for patients and people are healed faster.
Do you see how that one sounded compared to the first one? They're talking about this is the history in which drugs were being created and tested, and this is how we're improving that process, right? And it talks about things that might be shocking. You can tell she's a little bit more passionate. She's using things that we all know about. You know, it is a way to draw us in a little bit. And it's hard to do and it takes a long time, but I'm going to give you these words so you can see. I just wanted you to listen for now, because I think when we talk about ourselves, we're not seeing words on a paper. We're hearing words, right? So I didn't want to give you the words at the same time. Now listen to how she describes it in this last iteration.
I keep thinking about all those people who died before penicillin was discovered, or the ones who are dying now because the right treatment isn't available yet. If I can shorten the process so that I can get them help faster, then I am doing something worth living for.
Isn't that beautiful? I think about the people who've died. I think about ways in which we can save lives now, and that's worth living for. And that is like moving. We know what this woman does, right? So it went from I'm a research scientist and formally trained in cell biology to I'm the person who shortens the process of approving and getting new medications to market so that patients are healed faster. And then again, I have all of this text here between the first iteration and the last iteration of her elevator speech. And again, you'll get these words. And then this kind of more moving piece about if I can shorten the process between help when people are sick and when, and if they die, then I'm doing something worth living for, right? Okay, finally, all these opportunities. The more you're in these opportunities, the more opportunities you'll get, the more credible you'll be. You need to embrace this, whether you're looking to get something done at work, whether that's in an interview, whether that's in a presentation, whether that's a presentation at your work, or whether this is at a conference. In all of these situations, you're basically doing a sales pitch for yourself, for your work, for your research, for your accomplishments. These are just sales pitches. And that's hard. Like I said, sometimes that can be very hard of a mindset to frame from being somebody who's, might not be comfortable in this space. And we need to learn to be more and more comfortable about this. And I'm encouraging you to kind of use all of these techniques to do that. And I just say, go home and get organized. So I'm going to stop my screen.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.